Welcome to episode 0 of the Red Mountain Express. I am Blake Westbrook. Along with me today and always will be Matthew Joyner. Matthew, how are you today?
Hey.
This is a podcast. It's made in Birmingham. We were going to aim to bring you news and topics, information, and maybe sometimes some guests from the greater Birmingham area and beyond. Matthew, let's talk about how we decided to make this podcast. I know that this probably began with me and you text messaging one night and kind of just tell everybody what happened from there.
Yeah, so basically, we're watching the news, we're listening to things, we're listening to our podcast, and I think we both around the same time decided that this is something we can do, and not only something we can do, but something that we need to do. The Birmingham area has a lot going on, the world has a lot going on, and I think there aren't enough people having open conversations about current events in our city and in our world in an open, honest way that allows everybody to come to the table to talk about and express their opinions on these things. And so I think that was the biggest kicker to this.
And so when we started this podcast, we decided to do this little teaser episode 0, to kind of introduce everybody to the podcast. And it's kind of ironic that we're doing this podcast because I am not from Birmingham. Matthew is actually from a small city, a small town outside of Birmingham.
We're Birmingham posers.
Posers. Yeah. We're posers. I'm originally from Montgomery. I did go to school in Tuscaloosa. Never really spent much time in Birmingham. Moved here about 7 years ago, and I've enjoyed Birmingham, love Birmingham, and plan to make it my home for as long as they'll have me. Matthew's a little bit different. He's actually from an area outside of Birmingham.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Columbiana, which is in Shelby County, about 30, 45 minutes south of Birmingham. I did have exposure to Birmingham as a kid. My dad worked downtown, and I would come to work with him. I got to see a lot of the good and the bad of Birmingham, how it was 25, 30 years ago, and have been able to watch how Birmingham has changed over the last 20 years. But really, haven't experienced or enjoyed Birmingham as much as I do now until the last year or two, as my wife and I moved back here and we got to actually, be involved in Birmingham.
Did you see yourself living in Birmingham, or did you see yourself maybe growing up, or not growing up, but continuing your career in Columbiana or somewhere maybe not in Alabama?
No, so for me, even in Columbiana, I still got to do things in Birmingham. Even before I met my wife, and still lived in Columbiana, I would come to Birmingham to see shows, see concerts, to hang out with friends and spend time there. And I've lived in other places around, the South United States. I've lived in Louisville for a few years and lived in Meridian for a year and a half, and enjoyed things about different cities that I've lived in. But I think Birmingham, for me and my wife together, still holds the most sway just to the amount of things there are to do here, the feeling of the city, and all of our friends and family are still local to the Birmingham area. So that was a big factor.
Well, I had a very, misguided opinion of Birmingham. I've always heard what I guess you hear in the newspaper and on the news. Birmingham, it has the one of the highest crime rates in the country. The murder rate's terrible. What is there to do downtown? I even thought that when I lived, less than an hour away in Tuscaloosa. I met my wife. She is from Homewood, right over the mountain. And we moved here back in 2011. And I thought that I'll spend a year in Birmingham or 2 years, and then I'll move back to Montgomery. I got here, and all of my assumptions were wrong. There's a beautiful downtown area. People are wonderful here. And I think that Birmingham has a lot to offer a lot of people that they there's a big misconception that goes on around Birmingham, and so I think that's something that needs to kind of be clarified.
A lot of those things about Birmingham that you used to think were true, or at least they had some basis in fact. Birmingham's murder rate and crime rate were both extremely high back 20 years ago, and even today there are areas where it can still be high, but I think we're seeing a change in Birmingham as new businesses come in and new people move in.
Would you call it a renaissance?
I don't know what I would call it. Some people are calling it the revitalization. Some people are calling it the renaissance. And I don't know. Some people are calling it gentrification. And they're good and bad that go with those terms. And I also don't want to, go on to say or portray this idea that money coming in or new people coming in is what is making Birmingham great. Birmingham has always had some great features to it. It's just it was hard to have people come in and appreciate those things, I think, for whatever reason, for the crime rate or because of the misconceptions like you spoke about. But now as those misconceptions or those crime rates, those factual crime rates are coming down, people are more willing to come in and then leave and talk about their experience in Birmingham and what they've enjoyed about Birmingham.
So that kind of leads into our next topic of what we kind of want this podcast to be. I said earlier we're going to talk about news and commentary, maybe have some guests on from the Birmingham area. Matthew, what do you see from your end of what this podcast could and should be?
Well, it's just like I said a few minutes ago. I really want this to be a conversation, a way for us, for me and you, to have a conversation over this table about the things that are happening in Birmingham, but also for the people listening to hear our conversation, to have their own conversations, to bring in people outside, to have the occasional guest that comes in and joins us in the conversation. I want this to be an avenue of communication that's hard to find sometimes, especially with all of the things happening in the news these days.
And so for us to have a conversation on this podcast, we would like to hear from you. There are several ways that you can contact us. Like everybody, we are on Facebook at facebook.com/Red Mountain Express. We're also on Twitter. Our handle is at Red Mountain AXPR. And we also have a beautiful new website that Matthew has been working on for the past couple of weeks. It's basically been his baby. And Matthew, if you would take a few minutes to kind of talk about our beautiful website.
So yeah, the website is redmountainexpress.com. You can hit us up there. We have, well, first of all, the first thing you'll see is our logo that was created by Kayla McNeil. She did a great job of delivering exactly what we wanted and exactly what I think represents this podcast. We also have several pages up on who we are, just a little tidbit about myself and Blake. And we have some pages about how you can contact us and how you can participate with us if you want to, if you have something to say and you want to be a guest on our show, or if you have a tip to point us to for somebody that needs to be a guest on the show, we have avenues on there for that as well.
So like Matthew said, go to our website. It's www.redmountainexpress.com. And with that will end episode 0 of the Red Mountain Express. For Matthew Joyner, I'm Blake Westbrook. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.